Hi folks, in today's video I'll be going over 5 mistakes you may be making as a dungeon master that is hurting your campaign. Everybody is going to have their own style when it comes to running a game. But there are some things that you might be doing. I know I've found myself doing these things from time to time that could set yourself up to not have the best game that you could potentially have. And so by being aware of these things, you can avoid them and, work to be a better game master so that everyone's having kind of the most fun that you can have at the table. First off, being unprepared. Now, everyone has their own level of prep that they want to do for a game. I'm not here to tell you you have to have every single encounter planned out, or you have to have every NPC named and a list of the entire world and all of the lore. You need to figure out what is your level of prep that makes you feel prepared and comfortable. But at minimum, especially for a new game master, I would say have the major encounters figured out, have major NPCs statted and ready to go, and have the main parts of the story and the world figured out, have some kind of notes, whatever level that is for you, so that you aren't needing to pull everything just out of your mind. I think notes is a very good thing to have as a GM. Also, random tables are really great for moments where you need to come up with something on the fly. And even for those game masters who claim, I can run a game with no prep at all, in some ways I think they have prepped, even if they haven't prepped for that session, because most of the time that comes from experience. So you have prepped by running the game so many times that you are able to improvise. You are able to come up with encounters on the fly or come up with NPCs on the fly. You have prepped yourself even if you haven't prepped the game. Also included with this prep is prepping to have character engagement, making sure that whatever prep that you're doing, the adventure hooks or NPCs, is going to be engaging to the player characters. There's going to be a reason for them to engage with the adventure, to chat with those NPCs. Because if you don't, then the players may feel this lack of connection to the story or meaning, and that can lead to a lot of disengagement on the player's side. Next up, balancing your encounters. So first of all, you don't want to have way too overpowered of encounters. If players are feeling like there's just absolutely no way for them to win, they're gonna run away if they can. And if you're wanting them to actually overcome that obstacle, well, you need to figure out how to make it challenging without being too difficult. And this can be a wide variety of ways to approach this. It may be making sure that the monster has some kind of weakness that also ties into an ability a character has, or just doing the math and maybe doing adjustments if you're running in a system that the encounter tables aren't always appropriate to your party, because depending on your party makeup, you might find that yes, the XP equivalent or whatever the system uses is accurate to your party, but oftentimes it can be a little off just because of party makeup. Maybe you have less tanks in your party than the system kind of assumes you will have, or you have more, and so you need to adjust to match your party. On the other end of the spectrum, you don't want to have battles that are way too easy. Now, having the occasional easy encounter can be nice, especially for players who are just learning something, or perhaps, oh, everybody got a whole bunch of new abilities. Let's maybe have a little bit easier encounter so people can try these out. But if all of the encounters are super easy, it's going to be it's going to take hardly any time. And so you might be spending all this time to prep and set up the battle, and then in 2 rounds it's over. It's okay, great. As well as it's not going to be challenging. And as much as you want to have things that aren't too challenging, that seem impossible, you want your players to feel invested and feel I did something, and not just I walked in the room and all of the monsters fell over. Okay, great. I think the balancing of encounters also can mean balancing what kinds of challenges are you having. If you're always throwing combat encounters that are just bash this thing until its hit points get to 0, that can also lead to some boring campaigns. Add in some different tactical challenges. Perhaps there's a chase element. Perhaps there's a ticking clock. Maybe they need to rescue somebody. So it's balancing the, damaging the creatures, but also helping and getting to this other NPC first and keeping them alive. Maybe there's a puzzle element to it. So I think balancing the kind of encounters also falls under this umbrella mistake category. Another mistake you may be making is, what kind of voice are you using? Now, I'm not saying that every single game master needs to have, Matt Mercer level voices and be doing sound effects and character voices and all of that. You can be a very great GM and never do a character voice, only use your voice. But what I'm talking about here is utilizing the tone and tempo and volume of your voice. If you're speaking very monotonous and you're using the same words over and over, it's going to get boring. If your voice has no emotion in it, that is going to kind of set a very blank gray slate for the campaign. But if you are engaged with your voice, if you are engaged with your tone and set the feel for that campaign or perhaps that particular scene just with your voice, that is going to engage your players a lot more. It's going to set the example for your players. If I'm, sounding bored and checked out, my players are probably also going to end up being bored and checked out. But if I'm engaged and energetic, or if my tone is soft and you're going into the dungeon and you hear a soft creak and it makes you you can tell how that shift in my volume and tone and tempo changed the mood and atmosphere. So you can really do a lot with that, and it will help set the example for your players. So then as they're responding in character, you've set this great example that your players can then follow. You can also kind of help use your tone to focus back into the game. If you have a monotonous, checked out tone, people might be getting distracted a lot more. But if you're very engaged with your tone and your voice, you're going to keep their attention. A big thanks to all of our patrons, especially Alicia. If you enjoy the videos we make here, make sure that you are subscribed and then head on over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative to check out the bonus perks of being a patron. The next mistake you might be doing is forgetting about player agency. We've done a whole video talking about player agency, but if you are a game master who is acting like the game dictator and controlling every aspect of the game and not allowing players to make their own choices and do what they want to do, players aren't going to want to be in those kinds of games. They're going to feel, robbed of their choices and forced into a storyline that perhaps they aren't as interested in. Now, you can still railroad games. You can still have a game on rails while still giving the players agency, and we talked about this in the other video of how to successfully do that. But as long as you are giving the players choices and making them feel like they are having a meaningful impact on the game, they're going to be a lot more engaged. They're going to care about the NPCs. They're going to care about the story because they are having an impact. It is their story as well as your story. Which brings me into my last mistake you may be making, which is forgetting to communicate and collaborate. Tabletop RPGs are group games. Everyone is playing the game. The game master may have a more significant impact on the story line of things or the world building, but you are playing it with other people. So you need to collaborate with them. You need to communicate with them. Now, this communication is both in-game, communicating what's going on in the world and how the rules are working and all of that, but also out of game, communicating with your players about what's working with them, what's not working, maybe what they want to see more of. Have an open dialogue and be open for that feedback to be able to tweak and adjust your game, because then you also are knowing like, okay, the work and the prep that I'm doing is the stuff that my players are interested in. And this open dialogue goes both ways, because you as a game master can also let them know like, hey, you keep missing all of the adventure hooks that I'm dropping, or, you know, we talked about doing this thing and it doesn't seem like you guys are interested. So if you actually are, please take the adventure hooks. And collaborate with your players, whether that's collaborating on the world building, collaborating on NPCs, and especially I think collaborating on their characters. The players may create their characters, but you can collaborate with them on elements of their backstory so that it can help tie into the world. That will give the players some agency. And in some cases, it can take a little bit of weight off of your shoulders as a game master when it comes to prep. I think it's really great when game masters do a little bit of collaboration on the world building of like, here, I will provide the structure and some like base supports for what this world is going to be, and then leave some of the details open for the players to fill in and flesh out and provide the color. If you want more tips for game masters, we have a whole series of videos that I've put together in a playlist for you right up here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed and hit like. I'm very curious to know, what do you think are the biggest mistakes that game masters can make? Let me know in the comments, you know, is it stuff on my list? Do you have additional ones? Yeah, let me know in the comments. And even if you don't, drop in an emoji in the comments for the sake of an engagement. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye.